The ability to speak clearly and communicate effectively has many importance. One, it enables you to climb the corporate ladder faster. Two, it enhances your personal relationship skills. Three, it advances your social interaction and communication mastery. Four, it enables you to become a highly sought after, influential public personality. Five, it enhances your leadership and persuasive skills. And most of all, effective public speaking position you to build wealth. So what are you waiting for? Reach out to Seven Figure Media and get registered for effective public speaking made simple. Viewers from across the world, I want to take this time to welcome you to another broadcast of Seven Figure Media. Today, I have a very dynamic personality in studio, and I want to assure you that you want to stay and listen how she's going to impact your life, particularly parents. The guests that I have in studio today, they will transform your life because she will give you the tools to be a better parent. She will give you the tools to impact the lives of your children in a very unique way. But just before I introduce Nikki Hernandez, let me tell you a little bit more about Nikki. Nikki has she is the author for two books. She has two master's degree, and she has multiple national award in the field of teaching. Nikki is also a rising star in business, having developed Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC. Today, she will talk to us a whole lot about the vision behind that institution. What I can say about what I know about the institution is that Nikki is very passionate about reducing and removing illiteracy among people. She wants to enhance people's skill sets in mathematics and competency. And of course, the role of our institution, I'm certain, will also be having an impact on helping young people to develop critical thinking and effective communication skills. So with that being said, welcome, Nikki. How are you?
Thank you so much. Those were such kind words. I'm like, do I really do that? I don't know. But I
No,
am good. Thank you.
I do believe that anyone who, have started an industry that is going to touch and transform the lives of young people all across the world, and you deserve the flowers being thrown at your feet. It's well
Wow.
deserving.
Thank you. You
So
do as well.
thank you. So let's start talking about your institution. You have a new bouncing baby, which is Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC. Tell us a little bit about your newborn baby.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. In 2020, when school shut down, I saw, and it wasn't just me, it was teachers from across the country. We all saw a huge decline in academics, grades, literacy, math, all the things that you mentioned. And as a teacher, I was very concerned. And obviously, COVID was not the catalyst for these deficiencies. It was only a small part of what was already happening and has been happening for years. But COVID really brought these things to light and they were no longer ignorable. So I started writing books about the generational differences in education because as a teacher, I started to feel farther away from my students in terms of building connections and relationships than I had ever felt before. And thankfully, my mom is a full stack genius, and she taught me about the generational differences between millennials and Gen Xers and Gen Zers. And I have only taught Gen Z students for the past 12 years. I don't even know what it's like to teach Gen Alpha. Actually, a little bit. I have a little bit of Gen Alpha experience, but not much. And from there, when I learned about how Gen Z processes information and how they learn and how they think and what their style of logic and processing is, I realized how different we all really are and how we need to bridge that gap. So that's how the books got started. But from there, I said, I'm impacting teachers and I'm helping teachers. And that's a beautiful thing. I love working with teachers and coaching. That's like where my heart really is. But truthfully, I wanted to have a larger impact on my students. I knew that I was helping the students in my classroom. I was doing the absolute best that I could, and I was applying the things that I had learned. I realized realized that so many other students needed support. So a few years later, I had this idea that I wanted to start my own tutoring company to help provide one-on-one and small group services to students who maybe thought outside of the box a little. They may be entrepreneurs. They may be having trouble with school and academics for various reasons. And I said, you know what? I've been tutoring since I was 16. It's time to scale this out. So the books really led organically into Turning the Tide Tutoring.
You've said a whole lot that is so profound. I really love that you spoke about the Gen Z and the different types of, groups that we have, social groups that we have. And you spoke about learning style, because I do believe that very often what happens, and I would often say this, sometimes as a speaker, you're speaking, but then you're not communicating. And you're not communicating because you didn't take the time to fully understand who you're speaking to. And we spoke about this a little while ago. There are different learning style. There is what we call the visual learner, the auditory learner, the kinesthetic learner. And you can list that. And what I love about what I've just heard is that your institution has taken all of these factors into consideration as you roll out your training programs to impact the lives of young people. And I must say, kudos to you, and keep doing the great work that you're doing, because we need to have this dynamic approach to teaching. And I think with that, young people can get better results. We can get better results from our youths in the academic fraternity. So I love that. I want to talk a little bit now about, you are not just the owner of Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC. You are also actively involved in managing the institution and in the classroom. Can you tell us a little bit about how easy or how difficult it is to wear both hats as the owner, but still actively involved in the program?
It is so interesting that you asked that question, because I'm actually going to tutor a kid 3 hours from now. I have a tutoring session with a student who I have not met before. And yes, being the owner of Turning the Tide Tutoring is great. And all of that has it's teaching me a lot about leadership, about business, about training, about communication, as it relates to what you said about talking versus communicating and things like that. So it's teaching me a lot, and it's pushing me to get out of my shell, because I am a really shy person, really shy. Most people say, "Oh, really? Like, I can't believe you're shy." I am so shy. I am really shy, but I've had to get out of it, and teaching has helped a lot with that. That's for sure, because I feel very confident when I'm teaching, and that has helped me to realize that I can take that same skill set outside of the classroom and apply it to other areas. But inside, I am very shy. And the tutoring aspect of things, the business side of it, I'm learning something new every single day. In 2024, I made, a lot of decisions, executive decisions that I had to make in order to get this business started. I had to pour a lot of my heart, soul, and energy into this business and delve into areas that I was not comfortable with, that I did not know anything about. But thankfully, I hang out with some very smart people, and they were able to teach me a lot about everything that I needed to know, and I'm still learning. So I'm very humble and grateful for them. As far as the different hats that I have to wear, you mentioned something interesting a minute ago about knowing your audience. That piece is so important, and I still have a lot to learn, but I have a foundation now in the generational differences where I can take what I know about each generation and some of the patterns that link people together, some of the shared experiences that people of a certain generation grew up with. And taking that foundation has helped me to better communicate and relate to people intellectually and emotionally, because I can understand more or less where, not totally, but relatively speaking, I can understand where they're coming from. So as an example of switching hats, sometimes with Gen Zers in particular, I feel like I know them like the back of my hand. It's just like like, I feel like I can read their mind sometimes, not always, but sometimes I feel like I've got a good handle on them. And it's taken me a long time to get there. But anyway, as far as putting on a different hat, I'm a millennial. I was born in 1987, and I have very, I guess you could say, strong, passionate feelings about a lot of things. And when something good happens, I want to celebrate it. If Gary tells me, if you tell me that you've done something and you've achieved a goal or anything, I want to celebrate that with you. I want to amplify it. I want to go on top of the mountains and be like, hey, everybody, look, right? Look at what this person did. And I get really excited. I only do that really with other millennials. I don't do that with really any other generation, especially not Gen Z, because I have to put on a different hat with them, and their emotional capacity to process different feelings is very different from millennials. So when they have a success or a win in their life, I keep things very reserved. And for example, if a student told me yesterday that she was selected to be a part of like a very competitive singing competition. And inside, I wanted to be like, yes, this is the most amazing thing that I've ever heard, and give her a big hug. I wanted to do that, but I didn't, because I know that's not how they process their feelings and their wins in their life. I know that now. I've made that mistake once before, and I won't let that happen again. And when she told me about what happened, I just said, that's awesome. Cool. Congratulations. Really happy for you. Like, it just totally kept it like super mellow. And she was like, thanks. And then she just, walked away and went on her merry way, and we were all good. So putting on these different hats in business, in tutoring, in teaching, and just talking to people in general, it's a lot. And as someone who's naturally shy and introverted, it's not always easy to do that. That is for sure. But I think that one thing that really does help me personally in teaching and in tutoring is related to what you said earlier about the learning styles. It, for me, boils down to noticing people's gifts, noticing their gifts. And that's something I feel like I'm pretty good at. I can pick out what somebody is naturally good at just by, I don't know if it's just reading their aura or if it's just knowing their personality or getting to know them, but taking a second to point out to someone who may not realize it, you're really good at this. I don't know if you know that. Did you know that? Did you know you're really good at this? Did you know you have a talent for this? It really helps to build those connections and just make the relationship that much more strong when I do have to communicate in other ways and talk about school and other things. That relationship, that connection, that foundation, it's already there because I've taken the time to get to know them on a different level, if I'm presented with the opportunity. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes I have to not do that. Sometimes the student is very guarded. You have to, for me personally, I just try to I take what I know from a generational perspective, but I apply it on an individual basis, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I love that. You're very sensitive to your environment. And some may refer to it as being emotionally intelligent, which I think is good. And you're able to leverage that to your advantage, and pretty much interesting. I want us to talk a little bit about your book. You're the author of 2 books. And I'm really happy that you mentioned early on that you captured some of the realities surrounding COVID-19 and the impact it had on young people. Coming out of those experiences, you use your time to document differences in generations among young people. Can you give us some insight into your books? And in writing those books, what was some of the objectives you had in mind?
That's such a great question. So the first book, Empowering Gen Z Practical Lessons to Take Students from Z to A++, is a book mostly for teachers who want to help improve the behavior of their students and also the academic performance of their students. So those two things are, in my mind, very much so interrelated. So that was the first objective, was to help clarify some of these things about what Gen Z needs. So for example, Gen Zers are not usually, there's always anomalies, there's always exceptions, of course, because you have to look at it on an individual basis. You can look at it on a macro and on a micro level. It's not just static in one thing. But Gen Zers, generally speaking, are not big readers and they struggle with reading. And one of the things that I noticed about teachers who were not being successful in the classroom, particularly with Gen Z, they were were giving a lot of written instruction, step-by-step guides, long emails, syllabus, a syllabus that, is 20 pages or more and things like that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with those things whatsoever. I use them, I have them. But what I noticed with Gen Z is that they weren't going to read it. They weren't going to read the information. And if they did, which was rare, they weren't going to comprehend it. So that aspect with Gen Z is a big struggle for a lot of teachers if they don't know that. Now, granted, if you do know it, it's still a challenge to get kids to read and to write and to communicate and to process information in that way, because they're so used to consuming information through micro learning, which is short form video content, short, very like 2-minute read articles, very superficial type information. And that's what they're used to consuming all the time. And so I realized that as a teacher, I was really going to have to break things down and then break them down again, and then break them down again, and then maybe again, if I needed to, with the students, because they didn't have that foundation. They just didn't. That's not what they grew up with. And then the other piece was that I was going to have to be brief. I had to learn to be brief with my students when I communicate. As a millennial, a lot of millennials, not all of us, of course, but a lot of millennials are highly educated people. They have a strong vocabulary, a good, solid academic background in many cases with millennials. Not all, of course, but in many cases. And we can sometimes over communicate our thoughts and our feelings and use a lot of extra words. We can put together very complex sentences. But with Gen Z, I really had to boil it down to one or two very simple things that they could process and handle so that they could know what to do and then be successful in their own right. So that was the objective of the first book, was to teach teachers how to communicate with Gen Z first. Know your audience, right? What are they looking for? What do they need? How do you phrase things? How do you word things? Particularly if a kid pushes back or if it's having some trouble, those kinds of things. That was the objective of the first book, and it was very successful. The second book was more on the social emotional side. Gen Zers have a unique challenge that I think a lot of millennials, this is where Gen Zers and millennials can relate. They can relate a lot, actually. And there's not very many areas where Gen Zers and millennials have a lot in common. They're very different. You see it on social media. You can even go on YouTube and type in Gen Z versus millennials, and there will be a plethora, a smorgasbord of videos that sort of make fun of the connection that Gen Z and millennials have. And it'll have jokes and all kinds of things. So people have caught on to that fact that Gen Zers and millennials are very different. But the one thing that they do have in common is the fact that they are struggling to get ahead in life. They're struggling. Whereas Gen Xers and boomers, they didn't have this. They had challenges, of course, but they didn't have this quite the same challenges. Much of the challenges that millennials and Gen Zers face is financial. So millennials can very much so connect and contribute to Gen Zers' success in life by relating with them on that aspect of things, of how difficult life can sometimes be, the challenges that we all share as human beings. That's something that millennials can very much so relate to with Gen Zers, and that will help Gen Zers connect to people outside of their age group a little bit more. And that's not always easy for Gen Zers to do. They don't always connect with older generations very well at all. That's actually a pretty big struggle with them, is they kind of internalize a lot, and they hang out with their age group a lot, and they don't necessarily branch out very much to other generations. And there are some reasons for that. One reason is that they feel obviously comfortable with people of their own age, but they feel comfortable with people their own age because they feel that the people, their friends, their peers, understand their struggles. They feel like they're kind of on the same level, about a lot of things. Whereas branching out to a millennial or a Gen Xer or a boomer, they feel like a fish out of water. They feel like the communication styles are so different, and they are. And so that's where, if millennials and Gen Xers and boomers can understand that, they can start to tailor their communication to meet the needs of their Gen Z audience, who have very unique challenges in life due to, the political situation, the socioeconomic situation, the environmental situations that we've all got going on. There's a lot to that. And speaking to Gen Z on that level can be helpful. It's important, however, from a social emotional emotional aspect to understand that Gen Zers, as you pointed out earlier, it's about sensitivity, being very sensitive to your environment. Gen Zers are very sensitive. And one thing that they're very sensitive about is other people's opinions. They do not like to be preached to. They do not like people to push an agenda. They have a BS meter that is extremely high, extremely high. And if you try to push a narrative or a belief, an opinion, or anything like that on them, they will distance themselves very much so from those people. And they just don't like that. So they like the individuals who can understand a variety of opinions, but yet not push their own on anyone as an agenda. They do not like that. I've encountered it so many times in the education world where a student or a teacher has said something in jest, and they've made comments like, like a teacher, for example, said that they were teaching a history lesson and they were trying to connect the history lesson with modern times. And they were trying to show parallels of what happened back then to what's currently going on now. And some of the students actually got upset. They got upset because they felt that, and they were not right about this. This is an area where there's definitely some growth, some individual growth on Gen Z that needs to be made. And hopefully they will, maybe they won't. I don't know what their destiny is, but one area that could be a growth area for them is to understand that talking to someone and listening to someone share an opinion or share their experiences in life is not always them trying to push an agenda. Like in this case with the history teacher, they weren't trying to push an agenda. They were just trying to get the kids to think thematically about what has happened in history and how it can repeat itself over time in different ways, but how it morphs. That's all they were trying to do. And they got very sensitive over that. And so that is something that as a teacher, I think, and a tutor, it's very important to understand that they can come in with their own opinions and you can come in with your opinions, but where you're really going to connect with them is not pushing an agenda, but rather asking thoughtful questions. If you can ask them thoughtful questions that get them to think and say, well, have you ever thought about this? And do you think that if X happened, Y would happen? What's the connection? Is there a connection? I always like to use a lot of either or type questions with Gen Z, multiple choice type style questions with them. Like, do you think this happened? Will this happen, or this happen, or this, or this? I like to use a lot of multiple choice style questions with them, or either or type questions, because it gives them something to think about. And that's the key, is to make them think and process information differently than what they're used to, if that makes sense. So the goals of the book were more about the academics, the behavior. And then the first book was about the academics and behavior. And the second book was about the very complex social emotional aspect, of which I tried to explain just a moment ago.
Nikki, I can listen to you all the time because of the depth and breadth that you bring into what you're doing. And I'm going to recap on some of the things that you're talking about. In business, we talk about being market oriented, market sensitive, and then be responsive. And as I listen to you, what I'm hearing is that you have to use the same approach in teaching. You can't simply just develop the thesis without taking into consideration the learning style and the best ways to communicate with your audience, and just go and push it on them. So when we talk of being market oriented, it's about collecting the right information. It's about analyzing the right information. It's about developing information based on being sensitive to people's needs. So you collect all the data, then you respond. You don't respond, and then you try to figure things out from there. So your approach, I think, is very, very different. It's very unique. And as I listen to you, you are really helping me. You're causing me to reflect on some of the conversation I would have with my team. What I like about you is that you are not just speaking, you are not just communicating, but taking from the work you have done with the book. You are an effective communicator. That's what you're really focusing on. You mentioned a couple of things. You talk about learning styles. I want to add a few. Audience type is something to look at when you're communicating information. And you said something that is very, very important also. Young people today, they just don't like the reading. You need to take that into consideration along with reading, not liking to read. What we see is that sometimes as a lecture, very often when you are providing information, you provide information in cluster. And again, because of how youths today are programmed to think, clustering information doesn't work. And for them, you have to be a master at singularity. You have to go for depths with singularity, and then you expand from there. I'm really, really happy that you are incorporating some of these unique techniques into your book and by extension into the programs that you're doing. What it tells me also about you, Nikki, is that teaching is not about you and your ego. It's not about your community and your ego.
Not at
It's
all.
all about you taking the time to understand where your students are at and you asking yourself, what are their specific needs? And how can you best innovate, effective teaching methods to impact and transform their lives? And that is unique. The average person would say, hey, I have my program. You either learn my program or you fail my program. That's on you. But that's not your style. And I want to say again, a big, big, big shout out to you for the great work that you're doing in those regards. Now, I can actually say to you that I believe it is your method that is of the results of what the next question that I want us to talk about. You have attained many multiple national awards in your field as a teacher. I have no surprise why that has happened, the level of commitment that you bring. Can you talk to us a little bit about how it felt and feels to be recognized by national body as an educator who is an educator of a difference, to be awarded for this? Can you talk to us about what that experience is like for you?
Yes, there is something. I'm so glad you brought that up. And I think that there's something I want your audience to take away from my experiences with awards and accolades. One is that awards and accolades do not make you as a human being. They do not determine your worth or anything. It's just a feather in the cap. It's nice to have. But the joy that you get from winning an award or being accepted into a program or being recognized, it's great in the moment and you feel happy and excited in that moment, but it's short lived. It's very short lived. And so, just as a human being, if anyone needs to hear this message, I hope that my words come through loud and clear, that type of happiness, basing your happiness on accolades and awards, will not make you happy. And it makes you happy for the moment, but like I said, it's short-lived. So if I ever do get an award or, something cool happens or whatever the case is, I'm very grateful in the moment and I'm very humbled by it and I accept it and I'm thankful and I give all credit to God and all of those things. But after a few minutes, I'm like, next moment, let's move on to something else. Let's focus on what somebody else is doing. Don't really focus on me. So that makes me very happy to know that I don't rest or base my happiness on those types of things. And one of the reasons why is because those awards and accolades, they don't always come. Yesterday, actually, it was either yesterday or the day before yesterday, I submitted a proposal to present at a local conference. And I was very confident, very confident. If you would have asked me, is my presentation going to get accepted? I would have said, oh yeah, no doubt about it. Well, it didn't. It didn't get accepted. I got an email and it was fine. It was perfectly fine. The email that I got from the conference committee, they just let me know. They said, hey, thank you so much for applying. We appreciate you taking the time out to do that. But we, regret to inform you that your proposal was not selected this year to present at the spring conference. And I was perfectly fine with that. Perfectly fine. I wrote them back. I said, thank you so much for your consideration. And I wish you nothing but success at this conference. And I'll see you there. And I will enjoy the conference as an attendee. Very excited to come. And it doesn't bother me, not even not even a little bit, not even a little bit, that my proposal was not accepted. Because here's the thing, I truly do believe that timing, my seventh grade math teacher used to say this all the time. He used to preach it to us. He said, timing is everything. And if you get accepted, if you get an award, if that happens for you, it was because it was time for it to happen for you. It was time for God to make it grow. That's how I look at it. But if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't mean that you weren't good enough. It doesn't mean that your presentation or your proposal or whatever you did didn't have an impact, or that it wasn't meaningful, or anything like that. It doesn't mean anything of that. It just simply means that it wasn't time. It wasn't the right time or the place for that conversation or situation to be had. It just wasn't the right time. And when I look at things like that, I feel so at peace, because I know that what is meant for me will be for me, and what is not meant for me will not be for me. And I will not be shortchanged or overchanged in any measure. And so just having that full confidence in that is something that I just want to put out there, that happiness comes in waves. It's a cyclical cycle where you will have your ups and your downs, but no matter what the ups or the downs are, that doesn't change your worth as a human being in any way, shape, or form at all. So even though I didn't get into this program, or I didn't get to present at this year's spring conference, I won't have that opportunity. I do know that there's something better coming down the line. I just know. I don't have any doubt about that at all. So it's been great to receive awards. Like a few years ago, I received an award for having the best presentation at one of the local conferences. And I got to go on and go to a state, not a competition, but I got to present like at a state level, a higher level. And that was so fun, and it was so enjoyable. And everyone who came loved the presentation, and I loved every minute of it. And I was so grateful for it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make or break my success or my happiness as a human being.
The ability to speak clearly and communicate effectively will give you a competitive advantage in business and in life. So why not invest your time, talent, and resources learning something that can position you for greatness? And that is where Seven Figure Media comes in. They have developed a very unique platform titled Public Speaking Made Simple. And platform is all designed to help you to learn, apply, and master effective public speaking skills and effective essential communication skills that will give you the competitive advantage in life. All of this is free. All you need to do is to reach out and get registered for this program. Remember, the name is Seven Figure Media.
Awesome. So you're humble, you're keeping your feet to the ground in spite of your success and your accolade. I think that's a healthy frame of mind to have and to own as we navigate life.
It's
Love that.
amazing. When I got that email, I even kind of surprised myself a little bit, because years ago, I would have been hurt that I didn't get accepted. I would have been like, oh my gosh, why didn't I get accepted? It wasn't good enough. I would have spiraled. And now when I got that email, I surprised my own self by just being so cool about it. I was just like, oh yeah, no, that's totally fine. Thank you so much for everything. And I swear it didn't bother me at all. So just getting into that place, maturity wise, as a 37-year-old, it means the world to me. And I try to also help my students. That's one thing that connects to my students as well. I really do try to help them to realize that things will come at the right time for you. They will. And it's different. Your timeline is different. And as a friend of mine, she's just so wonderful. She told me one time, she said, Nikki, people are like avocados. And I laughed, because instantly you know what the reference is. Avocados they're ripe at a certain time, but it's different, for every situation. And people are like that. People sometimes are not ready, and sometimes they're over ready or whatever. But the timing of the person to receive a reward or an accolade or achieve something or whatever the case is, it will come in its due time, just like an avocado. You can't force the gestation process to happen when you want it to happen. It happens when it's supposed to happen. So that's kind of how I look at it now. And with my students, there's, in the education world, sometimes, and I can appreciate this, sometimes you're teaching something and a student doesn't get it right away, and they can spiral. they can start spiraling. They feel sometimes that if they don't get it right then and there, that they're not smart or that they're dumb or whatever the case is. And none of that is true. None of these stories that we tell ourselves, oh, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, that, whatever story we tell ourselves, they are not true. They are just flat out lies. They are not true. And I tell my students that all the time. This is a story that you're telling yourself, but it is not true, and you should not identify with it. And that's just it. And so for them, I let them know, you will understand it. No matter if you're learning calculus or Spanish or English, whatever it is, you will get there in due time. I promise you, it will click. One day it will click. But today we're just planting seeds, and it will grow eventually. All the seeds that you plant, they will grow, but it takes time, and you can't rush that process. So be okay with where you are today.
Well, I'm certain that that is definitely solid advice. Success is a process. It's not, instant gratification. It's a
Not at all.
process. So you got to embrace the process, the pain and the joy and the happiness. It's a combo. So love that. Nikki, you are on your way to build your 6, 7, and 9-figure brand. And I know that your brand has tremendous potential to impact the world because the market that needs your brand, it's very big. What I want us to focus on now is your brand, and I want us to focus on some of the programs that parents and children can expect to get when they become part of Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC. I know that you focus on calculus, you focus on English, you focus on science, history. Can you talk to us a little bit? So parents who are listening, they would know, hey, if my child is struggling with math, if they're struggling with English and calculus, I can reach out to Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC, and they can enhance my children's life. Can you talk to us about that so they know more about what you're doing here?
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me that opportunity. So one of the reasons why I named the company Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC is because I'm a beach girl. I love the water. I got the beach waves hair, all that stuff. I love all that. And that's the reason why I named it Turning the Tide, because the phrase turning the tide for me meant moving in a more positive direction. And with the students that I've tutored, the majority of them, not all of them, but the vast majority of them have struggled in some subject area. And I wanted to help them turn the tide to achieve a certain result, a much more positive outcome for them. So that's the reason why I named it what I named it. And as far as the programs that we offer, currently we offer a lot of amazing online one-on-one small group classes through the website. And how we got to that point is I handpick every single tutor that is on the website. So there's, I think, maybe 4 or 5 of us right now, myself included. And I met these teachers one-on-one. Some of these teachers I know personally. Others I just did an extensive interview process with. And I chose certain people because they had certain qualities. One tutor who just had a session yesterday with a student, when I first interviewed him, I knew that I wanted him on my team because he was gentle. He just had a very gentle, sweet soul. And I knew that I wanted that person to be on my team because I have students that come to me and they want to be autonomous. They want to be independent. They want to be strong and, all these things. And they're very enlightened individuals, but they need a teacher who is not going to judge them and is going to just work with them at their own rhythm and at their own pace. And they had their first tutoring session yesterday and it went really well. I texted the mother and I said, hey, how did it go? And she was like, oh, it was great. And, I was so happy. And I emailed the tutor and I said, I knew you were the right person for this. And, he was really excited as well. And he said, just thanks. And it was a really good conversation. So the programs that we offer right now are primarily, we do offer some entrepreneurship courses as well, but they're primarily academic. We've got German, Latin, English, creative writing, calculus, physics, middle school subjects, all elementary school subjects. We've got all of that covered. So there's really not any subject in school that you could ask and say, hey, do you have a tutor for that? We got it. We got it covered for sure. So the the other thing is, as far as entrepreneurship, speaking, one thing I know about Gen Zers and Gen Alphas and Gen Zers are very different. We're going to probably see more of that as the alphas get older and mature, but they are very, very different from what I see now. But the one thing that they have in common is that they want that autonomy. They want that independence. They want to, I don't want to necessarily go as far as to say they're free spirited, but they do want that autonomy and independence. They want that feeling. And I can appreciate that. And so with autonomy and independence comes a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business people, a lot of people with great ideas, connections, things like that. And speaking to your idea of the different types of learning styles, that is, very true. I'm a very auditory person. I am not a visual person at all. If you're like, hey, look at this graph and tell me what it says and analyze, I would be like, no. But auditory, I can do that pretty well. And as far as the students are concerned, there's different types of geniuses as well. And that is something that the school systems do not address, the different types of geniuses that kids have. They just kind of put everybody on the same path and say, here, succeed, sink or swim, basically. Is that what they say? And that to me is not what I wanted to bring. I wanted to really diversify the education pool. And one thing that I know without, I try not to tell people what I think. I try to just tell people what I know. And, with what I know is that tutoring, kids who receive tutoring, whether it's small group or one-on-one, their test scores, their confidence, everything is significantly higher than those who do not, significantly higher than those that don't. So whether the tutoring is for enrichment, personal enrichment. I did have a student who I tutored. He was fantastic. He didn't actually struggle in really any of his subject areas. He was very, very bright, but he just got tutoring because he wanted to. He just wanted to learn from other smart individuals who knew more than he did. And he wanted to hang around them, talk to them, learn from them, and be taught by them. That's what he wanted. And that's not everybody, of course. That was more of a rarity than it was the norm, but still, it does happen. So tutoring, regardless of whether it's for personal enrichment, like for him, or it's to turn the tide, meaning that you're experiencing something not so desirable and you want to turn the tide into something much more desirable and positive, the outcome of that is the same. It's going to be positive. It's going to be to your highest benefit, and you're going to feel more confident as a person and as a student or a learner. So that's what we've done. And as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, I know a lot of people, a lot of people like yourself. And if somebody were to come to me and say, hey, Nikki, I don't need, my child doesn't need tutoring in school, but they want to start a business. Do you know someone who can help with that? Yes. I know a lot of people who can help with that. So there's different things. There could be executive functioning. Maybe a kid is not, maybe they have ADHD, it could be a lot of different things, but no matter what the subject is or the issue is, chances are, I'm not going to say I know everybody in the world, but I know a lot of people who can help kids in a variety of ways. And it's not just academic. So that's what I really want Turning the Tide Tutoring to be about, is I want it to not just be about academic development, but also personal development as well, to help kids achieve their academic goals and also their life goals. Maybe they want to start a business or do whatever. I want to help them do that. And then the other piece is I love to reward people. I'm a teacher by day, so rewarding people for their efforts is something that I value. And for parents who decide to enroll in a class or get tutoring from one of our fabulous tutors that we have at Turning the Tide Tutoring, what I love to do is that if they refer someone who successfully books a session with us, I want to give them their next session, 50% off or free or whatever the case is. I want to do that. I want to reward people who have similar goals and like-mindedness as parents and mentors and teachers. So if anyone comes to me and says, hey, Nikki, do you know someone who can help with this subject? I'll say yes, for one. I probably do. If I don't know, then I will say that. I will say, I do not know. I'm sorry. I wish I could help, but I can't. But if I can help, believe me, I will move heaven and earth to make sure that your child gets the right person and the right support that they deserve and need.
Nikki, you're onto something that is so unique. And very often, as I talk with my friends from different parts of the world, one of the things that we talk about is academic audit. You need to make academic make sense. And again, listening to you, and I'm hearing a whole lot of, your focus, it makes a lot of sense. While you're focusing on the academics, you are not only looking at the theory, you want to also align theory with practice. So if a young person wants to know the practical aspect of starting, scaling a business, you want them to get that foundation from your institution, Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC. And I think that's very, very unique. We have a lot to talk about. But I want us to talk now a little bit more about, I want us to lean in more to some of the things you would have talked about as we begin to wrap up. How do you want to impact your students? I know you gave us some hints on that already. I see that your institution can play a tremendous role in reducing and reversing illiteracy. I see that your institution can play a significant role in enhancing young people calculus, mathematical competence. I see that your institution can play a significant role in enhancing young people's ability to apply critical thinking and effective communication. Something that we didn't talk about, and perhaps in our next interview we will talk about it, is financial literacy, because that's an essential key to survive in today's world. But talk to how much of what I said relates to your design intention to impact the lives of persons that comes into your institution.
You said something really interesting a few minutes ago about how this business does not have anything to do with my ego, and that is 100% true. I'm not driven by ego in this field in any way, shape, or form. I want my students to be successful. And while I don't carry their load, I don't carry the burden of responsibility that they hold. So if they're successful, that's great. I don't take any credit for that. If they're not successful, that's fine too. I don't bear that burden either. So I do believe that everyone carries their own load in life, and that the people who do want to contribute more to society and have a fulfilling life, they will. Those people will find a way. And as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's so true. It's so true. So I don't want to push anyone into doing something that they may not be ready for, or they don't want to do, or anything like that. It's not about, I want to change the world and I don't force myself on people. It's not that at all. If I don't want to come to them, I want them to come to me, if that makes sense. Because when somebody comes to you, you know that they have the motivation, the readiness to do what it is that needs to be done to achieve their goal. And I do believe in that. I don't believe in forcing anything on anyone. So what you mentioned regarding the impact of Turning the Tide tutoring, yes, absolutely. For those people who want to improve their literacy, which is a lot of people for various reasons, I definitely want to help them do that. That for sure is one of the pillars. It's one of the most important things that I personally believe in. The reason why is because I see so many students and adult learners. So it's not just kids. I don't just help kids. I want to help adults as well, college students, people who are in their 20s, 30s, doesn't matter. I want to help whoever wants the help. But the literacy aspect for me is such a critical component of a person's sense of wholeness, of completeness, to be strong in literacy and reading and comprehension and vocabulary and analysis and all these things. That to me, and creativity as well, that definitely helps to boost people's creativity. That is something that is so important to me, because it's a life skill. It's just as much as financial literacy is, so is reading literacy and writing literacy. Those things are to me equally important, because you can have the financial literacy, but if you don't have the other side of it, then that can impact what you are capable of achieving financially. And the same thing goes with literacy. You can be highly literate, but not have the financial aspect solidified. And that can also impact what you achieve financially as a human being in this life. So they both, in my mind, they go hand in hand, those two things, the literacy and the financial literacy. And I definitely want to help people improve in those areas because I've seen it. I've seen people post online that they have jobs that they want to, that they're grateful for their job, they're happy with their job, but they also know that they want to do something more. And that feeling of feeling like they're held back because of their literacy, it breaks my heart. And I've seen it too many times. I've seen people say that they have a second grade reading level. These are adults. And this is not an extreme case. This is real. It happens all the time. It's not a rarity at all. I've had adults say, I have a second grade reading level and I want to be a lawyer or something like that. They want to work in the medical field or whatever the case is, but they can't because they don't have the literacy to be able to do it. So imagine being held back in life. You have the potential. You have all the things that you need to do or have qualities to be able to achieve what you want to achieve, except the most important thing, which is your literacy. You're missing that critical component, and it's holding you back financially. It's holding you back professionally, maybe even personally in some ways. And so that piece I really want to help people address because in the school systems, I think that there's a lot of kids who are not getting that piece, and they're getting passed through from year to year to year. And that gap is just getting bigger every single year. And so they're struggling. So that piece is something that I definitely want to contribute to. Now, the other piece that you mentioned as well is the professional competence of people. I wish I could say that the person that I am today is who I always was. That is not the case. I have been very immature in a lot of areas of my life in a professional aspect of things because, you're just learning. But I do think that being able to communicate with others, and my grandma used to say this to me all the time because I was very shy, and she's kind of shy herself. So she already had experience with this. She told me, she said, Nikki, if you don't learn how to communicate with people, you're never going to be able to do what you want to do in life because people won't take you seriously. So it took me a long time to learn that lesson and to apply it in my own life. And I think with students, there are, and not just students, it's also adults too, if in case people haven't noticed, but there are people that struggle with professional communication. They struggle with communication in general. And a lot of that stems from confidence issues. They don't have the confidence to be able to step out and talk to somebody on the phone or on a podcast like this. They don't have that ability. And so I do think that issue can be solved with practice and with coaching. People do, like yourself, people do communication classes. They do public speaking courses. They take Toastmasters, classes and stuff like that. They do all of these things. They go to mock interviews to practice their skills at answering certain questions and all these things. And those programs, they really help you to get to know yourself as a person, like who you really are. But it also increases your confidence as a human being so that if you have a job interview or you have an interview at a university or whatever the case is, you can walk in there feeling prepared and confident that you're going to nail that interview. No matter what the outcome of it is, that doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, but you can feel confident as a human being and say, I did my best and I'm proud. And my mom used to always tell me, she said, Nikki, if you make yourself proud, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Don't try to make everybody else proud of you. Make yourself proud. And chances are everybody else is going to be proud of you too. It's just the most important aspect is to make yourself proud. And if you're happy, then chances are everybody else is going to be happy, but it's irrelevant what they think regardless, because you did it for yourself. And that's what I want people to understand about Turning the Tide Tutoring, that effective communication, financial literacy, professional competence, personal growth, all these things, they are very important. But at the end of the day, it's about feeling confident in who you are as a human being. And like I said, I wasn't always this way, but getting to that point, it takes time. There's a gestation period, but getting to that point, it's worth it. It's so worth it to put the work in and to make the investment and to give everything that you've got in this life to be able to say at the end of the day, I did everything I possibly could. I left it all on the floor. I didn't hold back at all. And I am so thankful and grateful that I didn't. And that's what I want. I want to attract those types of highly motivated individuals. And like I said, I'll move heaven and earth to make sure that you get what you need.
I love it. I want to put to you now, and to there might have been something that you want to say, but perhaps I didn't ask the question. I want to give you a chance to say it. So while you think about it, I just want to make two quick points on what you would have said. I do believe that has one invest in personal development. You have to see it as an integrated approach. And you did mention some of that. And let me explain why the integrated approach is necessary. One of the things that I've seen as a teacher, a mentor, a coach, a lecturer, I see that you have people who are very bright in marketing. They're very bright in the sales communication process. They can talk to you about what they know. But you are very bright, but you have never been taught what it takes to communicate information very clearly and effectively. And because we're seeing that persons are not trained in the art of public speaking and in the science of communication, it undermines how they represent their portfolio as sales communication professionals, as public relation managers, and it undermines that. What we see is then when we take that same professional and we help them to understand these communication skills, these public speaking skills, oh my, they blossom. And one of the things that we have seen, because in the corporate world, one thing that comes up very often is that they have high retention in their sales team. So when we do the analysis, what we see is that persons are bright with sales, but they are very afraid of selling. And at a deeper analysis, what we see is that people are not really afraid of selling. People are afraid of public speaking. And when we do a deeper analysis, guess what we saw? Between 72 and 75% of the global population struggle with public speaking anxiety. And if you as a leader in your organization is not familiar with that, perhaps you're just focusing on public relation, marketing, and this, but you're not focusing on public speaking. And there is a missing link. So this is that should be part of the integration process. The last point that I want to make based on some of the things that you would have said, because I do believe it's important. In today's world, we see persons with first and second degrees, but they are not financially literate. And that is a devastating reality. And what we have done, because the way we have seen people are trained year after year, they were trained, go to school, get a good education, get a good job. But why stop at just getting a good job? So we have expanded that in our program. We talk about go to school, get a good education, get the right education, and create your own jobs, build wealth. And on the point of financial intelligence, some of the things that we talk a lot about is why you work. You work to earn, you earn to save, you save to invest, and you invest to build wealth. That can be like an abstract terminology to people because many persons still don't know how to invest. You have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, you have a range of different things that they can look at. So what we have seen again is that when people begin to get this type of information as to how they can position themselves to build wealth, a light bulb does go off in their head. Because building wealth doesn't mean that you have to stop doing your passion job, but it just means that you can now focus on multiple streams of income and you can focus on passive income while you are enjoying what you're doing as an active earner. And there's nothing wrong with that. So we will talk because I love what you're doing. You're different. You're speaking a language that I think appeals to the majority of the people in the world today. And I can't wait to see your empire blossom across the world. All right. So coming back to the last question, is there anything that you want to say that perhaps I didn't ask? I want to give you an opportunity to say it now before we wrap up today's program.
Well, I think that the integrated approach that you talked about a moment ago, where it's not just looking at things in isolation, but seeing how they're
Yeah,
all interconnected and interrelated, is so important. And you spoke about the communication, the fear of communicating publicly.
yeah,
That is something that I have seen as well. And I had no idea until very recently that so many people struggled with
yeah,
public speaking or just communication in general. I just thought like it was just me because I was shy. I didn't realize that it was so widespread. And it
yeah.
really is. It really is. And there's so many different aspects of things. One thing that I really do take very seriously is my own personal and professional development as a human being. And there was a video that I was watching one time that talked about the power of your voice, your actual voice, your talking voice. And the guy who was speaking, he is the same person who's like trained a lot of celebrities to act in movies and do voiceovers. And also he's trained a lot of actors that are not singers to be singers in movies. Like I'm trying to think of the one guy, I can't remember. The guy who acted with Lady Gaga in that one movie that was all singing based. I can't remember what it was, but the guy. And I was like, oh, wow. He trained like these people to sing and he got their voices to be like that, to sound like that. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
And I listened to him speak about how to train your voice and, just different things. And I learned that the monotone, speaking in kind of a monotone voice, was actually a pretty common thing for people to do. And they also kind of speak at the same pace. I'm working on my pacing. I know my pacing is not great, but I'm working on that. That's for sure. But I
You're
realized
doing good.
that
You're doing good so far.
some I can be all right sometimes, I guess. But anyway, I learned that the pacing, the variation of the voice is so important. Like go high, go low, talk faster, speed up, use your hands, different things like that. And that helps to really make you come across as a dynamic personality. And I was like, okay, I can definitely take a lot of lessons here for my own self and apply it into real life, into my teaching, into everything that I do, because I just didn't realize that it's not just about, public speaking for the sake of public speaking, or, standing up in front of a crowd on a stage. It's not just that. It's really just your everyday communication, and what it's communicating with your wife, it's communicating with your children, it's communicating with your students. It's all of these things. And when you can vary the pitch and tone and pace of your voice, you create, I don't even know, it's very stimulating to the other. I realized, I learned from watching these videos, I learned that it's very stimulating, almost massaging, right?
Hmm.
For the other person to have these changes in your voice happen. They really enjoy it. So it's not just about, oh, let me be entertaining. It's not that. It's actually like you're actually communicating to the spirit of the other human being through the power of your own voice. And that is powerful. I didn't realize that, but it really is. So that piece I would definitely like to say is, I agree 100% that it's integrated into all of this, that really the foundation of the success is kind of your ability to communicate in different ways, that and to communicate with different audiences and things like that. That's a really important thing. But it also, even from a more simpler perspective, I think kind of big all the time, but even just from a small, more micro perspective, these things are also important at just building confidence, building self-esteem, and making friends. It can be just that. If that's all that it ever is for a human being, that's enough. That's more than enough. And I think that we all want friends. And you're right, it helps people to blossom as their truest selves when they feel like they have a voice. Not just have a voice, but when they're heard, and then they're heard effectively. Oh my gosh, it's like the whole world opens up. And then, so I'll close out with that. But the other piece I wanted to touch on, as far as the financial aspect that you mentioned before, is, and this is going to sound kind of harsh. The only reason why I say it is because I needed to hear it. Years ago, I looked at my paycheck as a teacher, and I got really frustrated one day, like tears. Why is this happening to me? I'm never, just a whole thing. And I finally realized that like you noticed about the public speaking, like it wasn't people afraid of
Yeah.
selling, it was people afraid of communicating and all these other things.
Yeah.
Public speaking. What I realized that for me is that it wasn't the financial aspect that was the real problem. The real problem was my own victim mentality. That
Mm-hmm.
that was where the real issue was. So I had to get out of that first, which was blaming the school, blaming the economy, blaming everybody else for, all this stuff, and having the mentality that like, oh, well, it's easier for other people to make money because maybe they started out with a lot of money. Maybe their parents had a lot of money, or maybe they inherited a lot of money, or maybe they have a good job that pays them a lot of money. Whatever. I had all these excuses wrapped up in a nice little bow that I could use and throw out there at any point in time to justify where I was in life. And I had the realization, thank God, that if I didn't stop that, I was never going to get out of the red zone financially. Was never going to get out. So it didn't matter how much financial education, didn't matter. People could teach me about the stock market all day. They could teach me about investing all day. They could teach me about all this stuff. But if I didn't get out of that and address that, I was never going to be able to create my own economy or meet someone like you. That was never going to happen. So just, for people who are interested in learning about finances and all that, I do think that there could be, for some people, a foundational element that needs to be addressed in terms of the victim mentality, if that's where you are in life. If that is where you are in life, and I have been there, I know. If that is where you are in life, you cannot you cannot elevate to these other levels of financial security and whatever it is. You cannot get to the top when you're here and you have this victim mentality. That victim mentality is going to hold you back until you grasp reality. And the reality is that you carry your own load. You are responsible for these things. And when you accept that and internalize that and start to step up and stop sitting on the sidelines of your own life, then you're going to start rising and you're going to start learning, and people are going to start coming into your life that can show you and help you and guide you and teach you things, because now you've opened yourself up to all these amazing opportunities.
Brilliant. Well said. I must say, I love your honesty and how you open up. And I can tell you're not alone. We interface with people from all over the world and who have this victim mentality. Some may say they've been born poor and they're going to die poor. And we have to say, no, you can fix this. So we have to introduce all different types of creative concepts to them. I mean, if you don't have the capital to do it, what about group economics? What about practicing minimalism? Going into, all different strategies to help them to break that mindset. So,
and what you're doing right now, like what I had to realize for my own self, that, how they say the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same things over and over again and then expect a different result. So people say that all the time, but it really is true. And especially in terms of finances, if you are a person who has a lot of great ideas, but these ideas don't ever come to fruition, they don't ever bring in any income or whatever the case is, stop doing what you're doing. And what you're doing is you're thinking, well, okay, this idea didn't work. Maybe it'll be the next idea that makes me a millionaire. And then it doesn't work. And then maybe the next idea. And then you just continue on that same path and it never comes to fruition. And it's one of those things where if you don't stop that cycle and that pattern, sorry, I got something in my throat, then you're never going to make any money. And for me, it wasn't big ideas. I'm not like a big idea type person. If you were to ask me, hey, do you have an idea on how we, no, I don't. No, I don't. But what I am good at is I'm good at timing. I'm good at timing. I just kind of have this, I don't know, it's this, I feel very grounded and very intuitive and things like that. So I'm good at timing. So I'm not going to have $1 billion idea. That's probably not going to happen. It might, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
The thing with me is that when I plug in to other people and I say, hey, and I remember talking to you, just, in the interview we did before this podcast, I said, what can I do to amplify what you're already doing? And that for me is where I broke the cycle of the victim mentality Instead of saying money is not coming to me, blah, 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 I said, let me break the cycle here. And I'm going to connect to people who already have an abundance, who already have a flow, a financial flow of income coming in. And I'm going to connect to them, not to be a parasite, not to take anything away from what they already do, but to amplify what they do so that they can make even more money or grow their own business. And then simultaneously, I will also
Get
the right
returns.
people, the connection, get the return, maybe even make some money to get out of debt or whatever the case is. It's ending that cycle and knowing how to end that cycle for you. And for me, it was connecting to people and just saying, hey, how can I help you? Because as I told you before during the interview for this podcast, I'm the type of person that functions best when I'm of service of others. But there are people that's not their MO. Maybe they are great people, they're great talking to people. They're great at connecting other individuals, great with relating to them. And even though I consider that a strength of mine, it's not my dominant strength. That's not my primary strength. So what I need to do is connect with people like you, who are people who do great at talking to people and relating to people and all that kind of stuff. I need to connect with people like you. And I also need to connect with people who are analytical, people who can look at information and data and my analytics, my website, stuff like that, and tell me, okay, this is what's happening, and help me understand the story of what's going on behind the scenes. And when you understand that, you start to break these cycles and you can connect to your inner abundance.
Yeah. There's two things that I want to say, and having listened to you. What you're doing, which is, you're giving yourself in service, I think is the greatest gift that you can give yourself, and is the greatest gift that you can give everyone else. And why am I saying this? I've learned many years ago the only way to find purpose and self-fulfillment is in giving. All right. It's in serving others. All right. Serving people at the highest level. So that's what you're setting out to do. In my, softer programs, we talk a lot about that. If you really want to scale your vision, it's about building healthy, productive relationship with the right people. Relationship is the mother of all social systems. And when you set out to build relationship as a giver, it lays the foundation for you to receive, but you never stop giving. So you're doing something that is very, very beautiful. And on the point of the $1 million idea, the $1 billion idea, I would say to our community, that because this is what happened. You find that people that want success, they have plan A, B, C, and D. And very often you find that they're going at all of them at the same time, and one cancel the other. So what I would say to people in my community, you don't need 10 ideas. You need a one idea that has the potential to become that 6, 7, and 9-figure brand. So what we do, we help them to figure that out, because there's a concept in our program, and we'll talk more about it, where we talk about doing the market analysis. We call it the ideal client stress test ladder, the client stress test ladder. So we ask people, who is your ideal client? And that should not be an emotional decision. So what we do to find out your ideal client, you need to know, one, what are their specific needs? First of all, you need to know who they are, their specific needs. And now you assess your ability to reach their expectation and possibly exceed their expectations. But then that's not the beginning of the end. You want to know that the market is viable. How do you know that? We look at market size, market density, market dispersion, SWOT analysis, pest analysis. So there's a method that will allow any rising star to say to themselves, okay, this is the path that I want to go. So when we come in, our role is to say, okay, that is not a viable sector based on what the data is saying, or that's a very lucrative market based on what the data is saying. So we use data to stress test your idea, to give you the assurance that the idea is a viable idea. So once we know that it's viable, the first test is to do that stress test. And the second part of it is where we talk about getting you on what we call the client conversion ladder. Because you may start a business, you may start a brand, but how do you begin to optimize your conversion? If you're guessing about this, is the reason why we see most people struggle and why most people go to plan B and C and D, because the integrated learning in terms of moving a particular process upwards, they are not very clear on that. And in academics, that's what you're doing. You're bringing bridges together. You're bringing different roads from different cross sections together to really help rising stars in the academic world to achieve their academic success with greater ease. And what we are doing that at the business level. So we identify all the key moving parts to make a business successful. And when we bring them together and we work with an individual, they can take the guesswork out because we talk about data collection, data analytics, the best way to leverage data and how to mitigate it. So it has to optimize your success and minimize your risk. So, well, we have a lot to talk about, but I must say, Nikki, it has been such a pleasure talking with you today. I've learned a lot. I feel your passion, and you left me knowing that your brand is built to touch and transform the lives of millions of people across the world. And I want to say this also, it's a gift to parents. Because many parents today, they feel so disconnected from what is being taught in the academic world today. All right, because what was taught then has changed. So many parents are not able to give practical advice and tutoring to their children because they're not familiar with the terminologies that is being used now. You know this, and your institution will definitely serve as a gift to those parents. So I want to give you all the encouragement to keep doing what you're doing, because I know this is definitely an opportunity to serve millions of people, and it is an opportunity to fulfill purpose.
Thank you. And you make a good point. I read a statistic, just an interesting fun fact, that 76% of Gen Z kids felt that their parents would not be able to offer them valuable life advice and guidance when it came to their future. 76%. They felt that their parents would be able to help them, like with some household things, teaching them, basic things like laundry or, washing dishes, things like that. But as far as giving valuable life advice, they did not feel that their parents were qualified to do so. So that is certainly not the case, because parents are, they've got a lot of valuable knowledge and experience and expertise that they can offer their children. And that's where that Goose, my dog, that's where
Okay.
that she's like, Mama, and pay attention to me. But she's sitting under me looking at me like I'm crazy right now.
Okay.
But the parents have amazing wisdom and advice to impart to their children. And that's where that bridge needs to be connected, I think, between the educators, the teachers, the mentors, the tutors, the parents, and the students. And the tutors can help facilitate and make that process a lot easier. Because if, like, for example, if I tutor a student and I can identify and isolate areas in which he or she is struggling, and then I can relay that to the parent, and then the parent can then say, oh, I've got an idea of how I can help them with this, or maybe they have some kind of strategy or insight that they can give me as the tutor to be able to help the child. These things can come into play, and then the children can then see that their parents actually do have some incredible insight and knowledge to offer them. That's where that humility factor is definitely going to play a role in Gen Z and Gen Alpha's success, because as we all know, when you respect your parents, when you treat your parents with a high amount of regard, regardless of what they do for a living or anything really, but when you treat your parents with that level of regard and respect, things go well for you. And that's something that to understand. And I understand there's exceptions to that rule. I understand that there's situations that are toxic and not good at all for some kids. I totally understand that. But in general, when you can learn from your elders and do that, wisdom is what true wisdom is what follows. And that's what's going to keep you grounded and successful. And in terms of money, if that's what, it could be in terms of anything, but just in terms of life and money and success and financial security and things like that, wisdom is it's the knowledge and the talent and the skills and ideas that you have that are going to make you money, but it's the wisdom that's going to allow you to keep it and to continue to thrive, so that it's not just earning a quick dollar or, making a couple grand or whatever the case is really quickly. Because chasing the quick dollar, making money very quickly, does not guarantee financial success or stability in any way. But it's the humility and the wisdom and the appreciation that your elders and your parents can offer you and teach you if you're open and humble to it, that is
Mhm.
really going to help you stay grounded as an individual and ultimately be very happy.
Well, you're perfectly correct. And it's a good note to end on. And I just want to say to our global audience that Nikki is only now getting warmer. All right. Nikki has so much more to share, and I want to assure you that this is only the beginning. We will be talking with Nikki so much more to really help you to better understand more about Turning the Tide Tutoring LLC. It's an institution that can truly transform your life, and I will drop some information in the description of this video, and so you can reach out, you can connect, and there is so much more information that will be coming to you over a period of time to really help you to better understand Nikki's vision and why you need to be a part of that movement, particularly if you're a parent and you want nothing but the best for your children, or if even you're an adult, you want to, enhance your literary skills, and you want to, expand your knowledge. I truly encourage you to reach out to Nikki and her institution. And she has a team of dynamic personality that are truly able and passionate about pointing you in the right direction. Nikki,
Thank
it
you.
has been such a pleasure working with you today, and looking forward to doing this some more.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
You're most welcome.
Can you imagine being the speaker who's able to speak and inspire your audience? Well, you don't have to imagine, because all of this is possible with Seven Figure Media. They have designed a very unique platform titled Public Speaking Made Simple that not only equips you with the tools to speak to inspire and empower, but in the case that you're a sales communication professional, it gives you the tools to connect with your audience and increase significantly your sales outcome. Reach out to Seven Figure Media and get to learn more about their program, Public Speaking Made Simple, that can literally transform your life.